Hello, everyone. My name is Anzara Miller, and I'm the Director of Educational Leadership and Development for CSTEP, the Center for Strengthening the Teaching Profession. One of the things that we do at CSTEP is to provide ongoing relevant training for educators based on current best practices. So, with that in mind, we're doing a virtual series on student growth goals best practices. Today, actually, in this series, we're going to invite practitioners from across Washington State to highlight goal practices and strategies for implementing the student growth goals that are having a positive impact on teachers and students. There'll be some resources and protocols on our website that you can use to follow along as you watch these videos. So today we'll be hearing from Mark Gardner, high school teacher in Camas and member of the WEA Student Growth Cadre. All right, Mark, it's off to you.
All right. So I'm here representing a team of teachers who have been working with professional learning that we've been providing all across the state. And so what I want to share with you today is what our professional learning has looked like and what we've been sharing with thousands of teachers across the state. So it's not so much the way that we are implementing our own goals, it's the learning that we're helping to provide to both certificated teachers as well as evaluators across the state. So as you can see in this first slide, we always invite our participants to start where the work begins. We always want people to picture the relevant, what's really happening in our own buildings and our own classrooms, because that's kind of the core philosophy of the way that we approach this professional learning that we've designed and now have been presenting across the state for several years. So when we think about the students we're serving, we know that the new student growth goals are very much rooted in student assets. And so that's where we want our participants to begin, to think what assets do the students bring with them every day to school. And so there's a whole cadre of us that have been working together. There's a few names you can see, plus probably about another 6 or 7 more educators. My name is Mark Gardner, and I do teach full-time at Hayes Freedom High School in the Camas School District, but a whole range of educator contexts contributed to this design of professional learning. But at the core of it is the idea that this student growth goal setting is about a process, not a product. It is not as simple as designing a single goal statement. It is very much how do we think about growth as a process using the new rubrics. And so that's the theme behind the learning that we've been facilitating for the last few years. And so we always, just like the opening slide I shared a moment ago, always ask our participants to center our knowledge of our students and really drawing upon what we know of our students before we start setting goals. And if we think back to the old version, the legacy version of student growth goals, it kind of left the students out. And so we've really focused on helping educators recenter on the students, the skills they bring, the dispositions they bring, and think about that as the foundation for the design choices that we make when we're thinking about facilitating their growth. So when we think about all of the training that we've built, we frame it around the 6 critical attributes. And the way that we've kind of set it up for our learners to deconstruct it even further is those first 2, essential, standard, informative, and summative assessment. Those are about teachers identifying what they know. They know their standards, they might know their curriculum, and really focusing on those inputs, those decisions that we make as practitioners. So before we even begin thinking about a goal, we think about what we already know and already do. And then we layer on, who do we know? Who are our kids? What's going to engage them cognitively and emotionally? And using those as the frame for the decisions that we make. We encourage our participants to share tips and tricks with each other, to lean upon the skills that they already have, that this is not about coming up with some new way of doing everything. These are leaning into what we already know, who we already know. And then the part of the process that we really appreciate also is these last 2 in student engagement and assessment, so feedback from students on their experience. That's the what did we learn? And so this frame of what do we know, who do we know, and what did we learn is the way that we kind of structure the professional learning we've been providing around the student growth goal process. And so the other thing that we've really been intentional about doing in engaging teachers across the state is really honoring their professionalism. So we provide them with a reflection guide that they fill in throughout the course of our time together, and really, again, centering the student. Who are the people that we're paying attention to? Who are the students we're serving? We also put some questions in this guide that really encourage them to connect with the work they already do, because so much great work is already happening across the state. What are the routines that you already have in place, for example? That's the kind of thing that we ask them, ask our professionals as they're working through this process. It may turn out that there are gaps. I know the first few times that I went through this particular scaffold, this structure, it made me reflect on aspects of my own practice that I needed to bolster up. And that's also a benefit of this process of leaning into our own assets as teachers and then noticing that there's might be room for growth or there might be gaps that we need to fill in. We also try to always, in every WA professional learning, model effective teaching practices. Since these trainings are typically 3 hours on Zoom or in person, kind of self-contained chunks, we try to also model that formative assessment can happen even in that kind of an environment. So we engage with like Padlet or like parking lots where we assess what our learners need and then use that to help shape our in the moment decisions in the same way that growth can be fostered in classrooms through formative assessment and shaping in the moment decisions that we make as professionals. So overall, we've had a pretty good track run, or it's pretty good run over these last few years, as you can see on the timeline here. 21, 22, getting ready. The whole state was doing some learning about the new evaluation or the new student growth goals. And then we peaked participation in 2023, 24 because obviously things were getting real and there needed to be kind of more action being taken. And we're continuing the current school year continue to offer Zoom courses to support the professional learning that our members are doing about the student growth goal process. We have also connected with districts and local associations where we've presented to teachers and administrators side by side, which is a really powerful way for learning so that folks can hear the same message. And related to that, as we designed this, we also engaged OSPI and ESD leaders as thought partners to make sure that we're all on the same page so that we as the statewide association aren't communicating something different from what OSPI or the ESDs are saying. And so we've been very much connecting with each other to make sure that even though we might have different audiences, we're still communicating consistent messages about what student growth looks like across the state of Washington. Overall, we've had pretty good feedback. As you can see at the bottom, our course evaluations averaging 3.9 out of 4. So we feel like we're providing something that's useful by grounding it in the professionalism of our participants, by grounding it in the critical attributes of the student growth goals, rubrics, and by also making sure that we are encouraging our participants to think about the work they're already doing as opposed to see this as something completely different. A few trends and patterns have emerged over the last few years. One is that when we share the idea that is shared by WEA, shared by OSPI and other folks doing this learning, that our evaluation process should be centered on conversation, we are hearing that that is not always the norm across the state. And so that was feedback that we've been sharing with other statewide stakeholders as well. There's very much an appetite among our members that this be rooted in two-way conversations between a teacher and their evaluator. And that's what makes it really meaningful. And that's, I know, part of the purpose of recentering student growth goals over the last few years. So that's that first icon with the speech bubbles. The second icon there with the checklist. This experience has also illuminated to us as an association that there are sometimes local policies. Maybe it's the collective bargaining agreement, or maybe it is school policies or district policies that are actually running counter to the intention of the student growth goals. And so there may be, deadlines or structures in a contract that actually inhibit the ability of us to have good learning focused two-way conversations with one another. And so that's also something that has just been illuminated for us to consider in our systems. And the last one, there are definitely some hurdles. There are still some kind of routines that may be in place that aren't even in policy per se, but there are hurdles to realizing this process the way that we envision it's intended to be, which is that that supportive, student-centered, learning-focused opportunity to examine growth. And some of that might be, our evaluators getting the kind of support and training that they need. And so those are some of the questions that are still sometimes an obstacle that some of our members are recognizing. So overall, when we think about this whole process on behalf of the WEA cadre, we're seeing a lot of educators across the state who are really hungry for meaningful conversations around student growth, meaningful interactions with their evaluators, and rethinking some of the systems to make that happen. And so, as the team, we're going to continue to be offering these opportunities for professional learning via Zoom. Continue if there's a local district that is interested, connect with their association, connect with their local UniServe, and there may be the possibility that there could be even in-person collaboration to provide this kind of learning at the local level. So that's kind of an overview of how WEA has taken on the professional learning related to student growth goals. And we look forward to seeing people at our trainings, which is always nice. So
We hear good things about this training. So I just wanted to have you guys on so that you could kind of highlight some of the things that you're finding folks are finding most essential and powerful from those trainings. So thank you so much for sharing. And we'll have the PowerPoint available on our website if you want to click through it and look at some of that stuff again. But thanks so much for being here today, Mark.
thank you, Ansara.